here's the thing. When it gets hot, like it did, the Auntie Zone, like the Twilight Zone, except it's the place where ants go when they're not visiting you, the Auntie Zone becomes unmoored from space and time. So if there are any unexplained outfit changes or giant cuts, mind your own business.
Guys, huge news. I have finally engaged with enough of Hassan Piker's work to be able to use him in a thumbnail. Hi, I'm Kate. I like to explain things, but oftentimes people aren't interested in the topics I want to explain. So I'm super excited today because you know what people really like? Clicking on thumbnails with Hassan's face in it. This is a fun place to be at when you're trying to explain why potentially people won't elect a president until we let white women be pastors. But, you know, here's the thing. Hassan made a joke that wasn't funny. Essentially, in an effort to vent his spleen towards people who decide that politics just can't matter anymore because they've done their part, he yelled at them repeatedly, "You can't opt out, you're not a white woman." And while I admit that's a lot of knots, and that's very confusing, essentially he was saying, as a joke, I mean, that's supposed to be a joke, right? I think. The only people who can opt out of politics are white women. But here's the thing, it's not funny because white women do have to care about politics. Because if it's not a joke, it's just misogyny. The fact that it's not a funny joke is actually his fault, because, like, you're obligated to tell actually funny jokes when you're telling jokes, but, like, that doesn't keep people from continually making that point. And also, to be fair, here's the thing. You don't leave misogyny at the door when you become a feminist, right? We know this. People hate women, and it's for real. And I know that's a really silly and ridiculous way to say it, but I don't know. I'm kind of committed to not overcomplicating things. People hate women. They really love the women that they love in their life, but they really hate women as a general concept, or strangers in the street, or anyone they can justify hating for no other reason than they're women, or they're rich women. Like, this is genuinely a problem that women who are abused but wealthy and famous, this is an Amber Heard problem, this is a Blake Lively problem, and to a greater and lesser extent, this is a problem for all women. And because intersectionality works the way that it does, just because somebody's white and associated closer to privilege doesn't mean that they don't have their unique problems. People really they really like being misogynistic, but they understand that they're really not supposed to be misogynistic. But mostly they understand they're not supposed to be racist. So what's easier for them to do is pretend like the only things that matter are how wealthy you are or whether or not you're black. So I'm not trying to say that these people are actually standing up for black women or at all anti-racist, even a little at all, because they categorically are not. However, in this particular instance, they also are giving themselves permission to act with more misogyny towards white women because they're white. This is a complication, right? This is a complication that, well, most of the time doesn't matter. The people who would normally act better on the internet would do messed up stuff, not funny jokes, or like insulting someone's looks, and think that it's like fine because she's ostensibly more privileged than you are. But that's also probably not true, because it's probably a lot of white men who are making these comments. And when you have a political structure that suggests that we are supposed to be taking care of the least of these, who are you going to look to if you're really kind of reliant on misogyny to help you make sense of the world, but you know more importantly is the least of these? And well, right in the middle there are white women. So a lot of people with Hassan's general politics really are very comfortable with venting their misogyny, just really things that go unquestioned frequently in their lives, well, that means they're gonna funnel some of their particular ire, the stuff that they say out loud, towards white women. And I'll have read something that Limea Lauren wrote regarding this, because in basically all things, she is the better messenger, and I digress. In a community post, so this is, I'm just collecting people I can put in my thumbnail. I'm so excited. You guys, I haven't even got to the biggest one yet. I'm so excited. When she had two people on to talk about the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, how to put this, entirely manufactured pillorying of a woman. Well, I just watch her stuff. That essentially she had two white women on, and well, let me read.
I've kind of moved beyond pointing out the incredibly problematic things my audience do, but I think this is something worth addressing. Every guest on this channel has been white, yet the only time them being white suddenly becomes an indicator of how they can't be trusted or shouldn't be listened to or don't have anything worth saying are when the guests are white women. Consistently, the white women who've appeared on this channel are significantly more qualified and credentialed than most of the white men. But it's only the white women who y'all question why they're there, insinuate negative things about them, or feel free to insult them in the comments. I'm getting tired of ignoring how some of y'all eat up what white men whose last names you don't even know have to say. Wow, that's a word I don't want to say on the internet. The bots can get me. On and questioning the white women professionals saying the exact same things as them. I'm tired of seeing their voices, looks, and right to speak questioned on my platform I invited them onto. It's sexist, and I don't appreciate it, and I'm not going to overlook it simply because they're white women and I'm a black woman. Oh, Limea is black and an immigrant, but I guess maybe I should have explained who Limea is. The white women aren't any more white than the white men. There are a million places you can go out on the internet to disrespect women. My channels, because she has many. She's great. You really should check her out. I don't know why you're here if you haven't seen her, but go to her stuff. My channels are not one of them. And also, girl same.
You see, you can see what I'm saying, right? And yeah, somehow there's this double standard here. There's this double standard here that basically anybody who's a woman who has really tried to address the misogyny in their life pretty much can say pretty immediately, hey, that's misogyny, guys. And what's my point? My point is this. Sure, we're not gonna be free until we're all free. And that's kind of a platitude. And it's kind of a platitude for a reason, because it really is not a mandate, right? White women, being women, are in solidarity with black women who are women, who are in solidarity with black trans women who are women, who are in solidarity with transgender men. To be honest, not because they're women, clearly not. They're transgender, but they're a gender minority. So women being a gender minority means we're in solidarity with even trans men. The deal here is that we see that in order for all of us to be free, I can't just ignore the fact that disabled women can't use the stairs, and so can't go into this building because the bathrooms are in the upstairs part of the building, that there are no ground floor bathrooms, so disabled women can't use this space. I can't ignore that and think that I'm working for the common good, right? So that becomes a platitude because people who don't actually go through the process of realizing the way they talk about minoritized people who have more relative privilege maybe continue saying dumb stuff. Or maybe people like punching down and see a target that is socially acceptable, which is not okay. And let me explain why. Not because we're not free until we're all free, which is true, but not the point, but because until we have women pastors, and in this case, I'm specifically talking about white women pastors, we will not exit this political reality. Like, there's not really anything you can aim for there. It just means that you need to be in solidarity with people, and that means a lot. I think Hassan is pretty frequently in solidarity with white women. I think he's friends with lots of white women. I think that his family, because he identifies as white, all the women in his family, or lots of the women in his family, because he's also Turkish, but lots of the women in his family are white. Like, he's in solidarity with white women. The problem lies when you start taking people less seriously, and ultimately, I think that's what's happening, because the kind of white woman who votes for Donald Trump doesn't have the same political needs as the kind of white woman who doesn't vote for Donald Trump. Sorry, this should be more clear. Famously, white women vote for Republicans right now, ostensibly through a corrupt bargain that says that they're valuing their whiteness over their womanhood, because whiteness gets them more than womanhood. And I understand why people would say that. White women are oppressed. Why are they voting for Republicans? They're voting for Republicans because their whiteness protects them from the worst of the violence, because the whiteness is associated with money. And money means that you don't have to experience a lot of what happens to the most marginalized in our society, because you aren't as marginalized because you have money. This is true, but it's not the full picture, and ignoring the full picture is what gets people into these problems where they're making jokes that they think. Well, I'm gonna be honest, I don't think Hassan thinks this is funny, and I am gonna say he is a feminist, so he does know better. But the reason he's yelling at these people, venting his spleen, and bringing white women into it, is because they're an easy target. Women in general are an easy target. That's what misogyny makes sure that we all know, that women are the easiest to criticize. They're the easiest to deny basic human rights, except for the trans women, who are women. So I guess what I'm saying is for non-binary people or gender non-conforming people. But they're receiving punishment for being feminine. So let's all just say that femphobia makes everything easier to blame on women, because all the overlapping systems of oppression I've listed come from the very top. Because number one oppression, the one that when we go backwards in time is present in almost every society, and definitely every society that wants to write anything down, is patriarchy. And patriarchy, its best friend, is misogyny. And when you are trying to address patriarchy and failing, or just not actually trying to address patriarchy, you will be left with misogyny. Misogyny will be there. As long as patriarchy is there, misogyny is with it. White women, as the kind of white woman who's caught between the two, I find myself in a very interesting position. Hi, I'm Kate, I am a Democrat. Anyway, I have always been and forever will be progressive. I just simply am a progressive person. I'm also a Christian, and that kind of gives me an insight into what the socially conservative women are actually needing in their lives when it comes to feminism. Because what a progressive woman needs from feminism looks different than what a socially conservative woman needs. I guess what I'm trying to say is conservative women do actually need feminism in politics. But unlike the progressive women whose issues with religion are solved, because I argue they are not, when they leave the church, a conservative woman doesn't want to leave the church. That's not going to solve her issues. But what might solve her issues is if we allowed women to be pastors. I think that the thing that really gets me about this whole thing is that ultimately people would know this. People would know this if they actually cared about white women who vote for Donald Trump. And they don't, and they have no reason to, except that we're not free until we're all free. And I just think, I guess my call to action here on the eve of James Dobson finally passing on into the great blue yonder And I really have to be careful because allegedly we're going to be in heaven together. Besides the fact that I don't care about heaven, I don't care about James. Oh, actually, that's not true. I clearly care very much about James Dobson. What I really, 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 really want to impart on people is that people like Dobson, people who spent the 1980s building the coalition of the right into what it is now, those people were just people. They weld. What is the past tense of that word? Wield. They wield the power that culture provides. They are not set in stone, even though apparently they like to make lots and lots of promises about how biology works while also not believing in biology. But that only makes them harder to fight, right? Especially if you don't care about white women, especially when they're politically conservative. But I feel like I shouldn't really have to explain why, if the potential for women to be pastors is present in all of Christianity, even when there isn't a woman at the head of the community, it would allow for certain people to get over the fact. If that's true, I don't think it's going to be harder. I think it'll only ever be easier to elect a woman as president. And since what we really like to do as Democrats is nominate women for president, for all the great reasons we should be nominating women for president, I think it maybe behooves us all to support people who are making that connection, making that through line, saying, hey, this was a entirely culturally enforced thing that came about because specific people working specific aims in the 1980s. I can tell you that because I don't know a lot about James Dobson. I think he's associated with Baptists. I'm not a Baptist. My particular denomination when I went to church, my particular denomination also, randomly, for no reason apparently except that they felt threatened, decided to explicitly outlaw women serving as pastors in the 1980s. Actually, only a few years before I was born. So within my lifetime, people have gone from so before my lifetime, nobody cared because it was kind of assumed women weren't going to be pastors. As soon as feminism came about into the mainstream in the 1970s, instead of as voting rights and more civil rights, and this was more social rights in the 1970s, as soon as that happened, these reactionary men decided, you know what we need to do? We need to protect what we have right now so that we can make inroads into taking what they have gotten. That means, instead of just taking for granted that women weren't going to be pastors, because when women start actually paying attention to the call that God puts on their lives, they might notice that sometimes that means that they need to be leading people who aren't women, people who are men older than the age of 13. Because that is where this goes. And since that's real stupid, and I'm going to have a really hard time explaining something that's that stupid, let me just quote, I guess she's my favorite historian. Isn't that wild? Let me quote my favorite historian. Let me read from literally page 1 of the introductory text, The Making. Sorry, I made the doodles on that, and at a retreat. So I'm for real, okay? So literally I'm losing. Talking about intersectionality, I'm a progressive Christian woman. Literally no authority. No one is going to give me authority. Nobody's going to give me authority. And I can explain why later, because I'm already off topic. Okay.
My Southern Baptist world of small-town Texas preached the divinely ordained roles of women. In everything from sermons to Sunday school lessons to advice from well-meaning teachers, women were called to secondary roles in church and family, with an emphasis on marriage and children. Once I remember hearing a woman speak from behind our church pulpit. She was single, a missionary, and an adult explained to me, only describing her experiences. This rationalization just reinforced her strangeness. A single woman behind the pulpit was aberrant. Married women behind their husbands were norm. James Dobson was everywhere, filling even the airwaves with his regular radio broadcast. As a teenager, I remember flipping through his book, Love for a Lifetime. I learned that biology, from biblical fundamentalist, do not believe what a biblical fundamentalist says about biology. They don't think evolution is real. That is the foundation of... I'm off topic. Anyway, I learned that biology predetermined my physical weakness and emotional instability, drawing me to my divinely created masculine complement. Dobson wrote to strengthen marriages, offering to help spouses who are pulled apart by their natural differences. Show me a quiet, reserved husband, and I'll show you a frustrated wife, he wrote. She wants to know what he's thinking and what's happening in his office and how he sees the children, especially how he feels about her. The husband, by contrast, finds some things better left unsaid. It's the classic struggle. In just a few sentences, Dobson impressed upon me the shape of the normal Christian household. A father returning from his office job to the home front managed by his wife and children. Select biblical passages undergirded by the notes in my study Bible were woven through the sermons, Bible studies, and devotionals, creating a seamless picture of scriptural support for female subordination. Women were made to desire their husbands and let them rule, Genesis. Women were to trust God and to wait for their perfect husband, Ruth. Men's voices were public, while women's voices were private, 1 Corinthians, 1 Timothy. When women did take charge, it was either sinful, Eve, or because men had failed their jobs, Deborah. A woman's position was supportive and secondary unless she had to temporarily step into leadership when men could not. And I think it's very important to note here that this entire book, like the next 218 pages, are about how that was completely and utterly defined by culture and the historical process. She points to every step in history that leads us to this place right now, where that's the definition of biblical womanhood. So maybe read the book. I don't know. Probably a good idea.
Kate from the near future. I feel like I can do a better job at explaining this whole thing, because I think people who don't engage with religion on a regular basis, leftists who tend to be atheists, so why would they engage with religion on a regular basis, tend to, I'm not going to say it's a monolith, because I don't think that's what's happening. I think what people do is that since they aren't a part of the community, they don't try to think about how it's still like any other community based on social norms and power dynamics. And when people like James Dobson, horrific man, sucks, glad he's not here anymore, finally die, that gives people the opportunity to move in those communities in ways that look different. When we can actually let go of these horrible, horrible men whose legacy largely is violence against marginalized people like women, how can we not be excited? How can we not be excited and feel invigorated towards moving forward? And again, I really have to be careful because allegedly we're going to be spending eternity together. Can you see why I don't care about heaven? Anyway, right before I was born, basically lots of mainstream religions parted ways. They either decided they were going to lean towards oppression, and it's called complementarianism in Christianity, or they were going to lean away from it. And the ones that leaned away from it have women pastors. They're more progressive. They're more likely to be affirming of queer people, because a lot of what these things come down to is patriarchy. But I can't explain that right now. I have to just continue. Over the course of my life, I was raised in a complementarian light situation. And that's how we get to purity culture. It's how we get to where we are today, where women are just, in my complementarian light church was told, you're a girl. When we're looking for spiritual gifts, you don't have to answer the questions about authority and leadership because you just don't have leadership potential. Well, that's not true. And people can see through lies if given the opportunity. This is why complementarian light looks different than complementarianism, because complementarianism goes down such stupid rabbit holes as to say that a 13-year-old boy has more authority than a 70-year-old woman. Equally been involved in the church their whole lives, but one just has maybe more experience, is better equipped to say anything about life in general, really, except like what it has to do the lived experience of a 13-year-old boy, you know. Ultimately, when you believe in spiritual gifts, which Christians do, many do, you gotta think. You gotta think. If God is calling people, which is He is, maybe the extreme measures that have come about in order to reinforce complementarianism aren't from God. Maybe the truth is simpler than that women should be really careful and be really careful not, even though they're experiencing PTSD from a trauma that they've been put through because of a man who is exerting his power. But you have to be really careful, because what if you ruin his career? What if you ruin his career? Your life doesn't matter. Subtext. Because on the textually, of course, they care about women. That's why they, I think I've explained. Let's move on. That is where this goes. And if more people were calling out how crazy the position is that 13-year-old boys get to have more spiritual authority than grown adult women or even other 13-year-old girls, the world would be so different. I don't think this video is going to get out to a lot of people who are having problems with the left the way I do. I think a lot of the people who are going to be watching this video are more politically mainstream than I am. I think my call is, it's time to get creative. Patriarchy and misogyny are huge, huge things that have existed, I'd argue, since the fall. And though I think the fall is an allegory for humans emerging as we currently do, the point is, misogyny is the... I got cut off. Misogyny is huge. It is vast. It is so pervasive that people who think that they're feminists, who are feminists, and some who just kind of pay lip service to it, engage with it all the time. They just target people in socially acceptable ways. One of the things that you do when a goal that is so large that you can't conceptualize it ending, like getting rid of patriarchy, is pick achievable goals. You know what's achievable? Women pastors. They went away before they even got started in many American white, particularly, denominations for very specific reasons. If we are to address patriarchy in a larger context, perhaps if we are to, in the place where they live, go after the most socially conservative people in a very practical, reasonable way, I think the world is a better place when the socially conservative pastors are women. I think that's true. I think because unlike relying on capitalism to solve things, which is an amoral, disgusting thing that has also alleviated a lot of human suffering, it's complicated. It's amoral. Sometimes it does good things and sometimes it does bad things. So is religion as a whole. But you can appeal to the moral superiority of Christians when you say that it's not acceptable to oppress people, and the reasons that they have been doing it are flawed and not from God. When the reason for your religion is God, and you can argue about whether or not and what God is, how he's not actually interested in women being oppressed and doesn't actually glorify him in any way, can you see how that's easier to do than to say, make sure women have jobs? I'm not, I guess being a pastor is a job. All I'm just trying to say is this isn't girl boss feminism. And it's a type of feminism we haven't really engaged with, so maybe it's worthwhile. I'm Kate. I really hope I've explained something, because the last time I did, it was like literally 100 degrees out, and I didn't look as cute. And I don't think I'm gonna, I guess I could do this outfit again, but I don't know. I hope I've explained something. Bye!
Ding dong, the witch is dead. Witch, oh witch, the wicked witch. Ding dong, the wicked witch is dead. She's gone where the goblins go below. Below, below, yo ho. Let's open up and sing and ring the bells out. Ding dong, the merry-o. Sing it high, sing it low. Let them know the wicked witch is dead. My genuine, real reaction when I heard the news. Yes, I am this petty.
If it's not clear by now, it turns out a lot of people on the left still have a problem with misogyny. Guys, you need to let me know when I have lipstick on my teeth. Come through the screen from the future and tell me.